eastcoast.co.uk.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Shelagh Fogarty. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Shelagh Fogarty on LBC.
Going to talk about that hoax and other hoaxes, and I want to hear your calls. I don't want any hoax calls, just so you know. Don't prank me. Just talk to me. We'll also talk about a couple of news stories, a couple of other news stories which have emerged today. Clare's Law, which allows people to find out if their partner has a history of domestic violence, has been used more than 1,300 times in less than a year. We'll talk to the Labour MP Hazel Blears about that. First, though, David Cameron was the victim of a hoax call. It's been revealed. We had him talking about it just a moment ago whilst talking to Theo. I want to hear whether you've ever either played a prank or been the victim of a hoax call. I have. Tell you all about it later. I'm delighted to say that here to discuss the hoax call that David Cameron received and one that he did himself some years ago with the former Prime Minister Tony Blair is Jon Culshaw. Pleasure to meet you.
It's bringing back some memories, all this today. It really is.
I bet it is. And I've just learned from you, you did it in this very building at LBC.
This very, very building, almost 17 years ago to the day.
Let's have a listen.
OK.
Cabinet office.
All right, it's William Hague. I just wondered if Tony was available.
I'll put you through to number 10. Hold a moment.
Thank you very much indeed.
Hello?
Hello, Tony.
Yeah.
Hello there, it's William Hague.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd, just phone it for a chat. Say hello, see how you're getting on, that sort of thing.
It's quite a good imitation.
How dare he? It's quite a good imitation. It's a brilliant imitation.
It was 17 years ago, and yes, it was a younger version of William Hague then, and now it has mellowed a little bit, and the Yorkshire monotone is more drawn out and things like that.
He's got a very distinct voice, hasn't he? You know what I mean by that? Where you can...
Yes.
Some voices are much of a muchness, but he has a very distinct voice.
Yes, I think he's an impersonator's absolute dream. The way he pronounces words like Damascus and Benghazi in the job as
and
foreign
lengthens
secretary.
those vowels.
Yes, you get your money's worth out of every word.
Tell me about the lead up to that call then. Were you nervous about doing it?
I was. That was the time when I used to work here on Steve Penk's show. He used to get me in, and
he was a bit of an arch pranker.
Well, yes, he was known for doing
Have to be
those.
careful there.
He'd normally do those where it would end with "Hello, yes, only me," that type thing, and I would do the impression versions of those. And I just formulated this new William Hague voice. He was the newly elected leader of the Conservative Party at that time, 1998. And we just had the idea that, well, if we're going to make a call featuring William Hague, it might as well be Downing Street. And it happened to be on a Wednesday morning. And so Steve looked up the number of the Cabinet Office from Directory Inquiries, and he pressed the button, and he put the microphones up, and that was that. And the lovely, helpful lady on the switchboard... you did... The very fact that you started by saying hello is William Hague. Yes, hello, it's William Hague. It was a Wednesday morning, which was Prime Minister's question time, and it was quite usual that Hague might have called.
Right.
So it sort of fitted in with the general
timetable.
Normality. And there was these very long pauses that I remember where we were thinking, now she hasn't really gone to fetch Tony Blair, has she? And then she came back and she said, oh yes, Mrs. Blair's just gone to fetch him from his bedroom for you.
Really?
Yes. She was like a character from Little Britain, this lady. Mrs. Blair's just gone to fetch him for you. Oh,
That's
no.
extraordinary.
And this wasn't the plan, you see, so I just had to improvise something a bit quick.
But it's interesting that you said there at the beginning that it fit in with the normality and the schedule of the day. And that's key, isn't it, to getting people to relax and potentially, I mean, he rumbled you quite quickly, but to get somebody to be suggestible, they need to feel like normal stuff is happening, don't they?
Yes, just the normal run of the mill of the day. And Hague always addressed him as Prime Minister, but we didn't know that, you see. And in the era of, just call me Tony, and that sort of vernacular that Mr. Blair was pioneering at the time. We said, hello, Tony. And that's where it didn't ring true for him. That's when he rumbled it, you see.
But also, I wonder whether they have certain codes between themselves so that they know.
Apparently they do now. This is part of the culture much more. There's much more of a procedure for putting calls through.
Because you think of social media now, the capacity for
Yes.
for pranks and hoaxes. Is
Much more
enormous.
unwieldy and mercurial.
Yeah.
So I think there are more measures put in place, as they say.
And on this one, he's revealed apparently that he was out with his family and was giving his daughter a piggyback and got the call through on his mobile. And and you think about it,
That's rather interesting, actually, to consider the Prime Minister answering a call in such a laid-back fashion. You imagine that...
Well, I guess he relies on that network of people. It may just be two people, I don't know, but
Yes.
that he presumes calls don't come through unless they've been checked.
Yes,
but he was
exactly.
savvy enough to know there was something amiss when somebody said, sorry to wake you at 11 in the morning.
Exactly. I think because this call, it clearly wasn't for broadcast. There was nothing recorded. There was nothing to listen back to.
Yeah.
And I think that's led
It's
to
gonna be a
everybody listening back to
student.
mine and Steve's one.
It's going to be a student, isn't it?
It would seem to be that way. Somehow or other, these numbers have filtered out from GCHQ. And,
Now, the most significant sort of call prank I've ever been on the receiving end of was on my last day presenting the breakfast show on BBC Radio 5 Live. I might as well just say it. I know that we're competitors now, but and I'd presented for years with Nicky Campbell, who's a great friend and a great colleague, and he completely fooled me on my last day, and I did a phone interview with a man I thought was an emeritus professor of politics, it was just Nicky, and he just had me hook, line and sinker. And again, I think it's, early morning, tired, I suppose, but that suggestibility that's in all of us, that what is happening actually is real.
Yes, it would have been, I guess, sounding perfectly natural, just fitting into the background of the day.
Yeah. Well, I had a script and briefing notes on this individual, this completely fictitious individual.
I drove the bounder, how day.
And he was a very difficult interviewee, deliberately, because he knew, over years of working with me, he knew what would press my buttons and what would annoy me.
I hope this is recorded somewhere. I want to have a listen to it now.
It is somewhere, it is.
Well, we've got that. We can play that for you now.
And although it wasn't on air because I swore, so I'm glad it wasn't on air, there was a point at which I said on the talkback, who booked this? I won't tell you what I said, but you can imagine. But in he walked to tell me it was him. But yeah. But we know, don't we, that you think of the fairly recent sad story of Jacinta Saldana, that it can go wrong. People can...
Well, yes.
It's a bit like who takes offence and who doesn't, and who finds things funny and who doesn't, because... I think you're pretty safe ground with the Prime Minister, who's used to all kinds of incursions.
There is that. But I think if you're going to do these types of calls on a programme like Dead Ringers or on a show like Steve's one, if you can call a cab office, you can call a pizza shop, that's fine. You must never call a hospital or a place such as that, because the result is, at the very least, you're going to stop a medical person doing from what they should be doing.
Yeah.
Even for a few seconds. You can't do that.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can phone a cab office or a pizza place, but anywhere like that, you must leave well alone. That's my view.
Yeah, it's interesting actually that you draw those distinctions, because the harsh reality there is that the individual's sensitivity was pricked in some way, wasn't it? Who knows what the wider issues were? I don't know, but it's about judging. And I suppose from a distance you can never judge this: who's soft and who isn't. Who's too soft for it.
Yes, I
too
mean,
sensitive for it.
As has been said, that could have never ever have been predicted to that extent. But at the very beginning, you can't call a hospital in a situation like that. Anywhere like that is an absolute no-no, in my view.
It's interesting.
Of course.
And you mentioning cab companies has just jogged my memory. It's something I used to do. I thought it was so funny. I don't think it's that funny now, but when I was a student, I used to ring, when I rang cabs, they'd say, and you can have your name, and I'd say, yes, Jelly, Miss Jelly. And they'd say, Jelly? And I'd say, yes, Miss Jelly. And they'd say, OK, we'll see you at 9. And I said, great, that's all set then. I just thought it was really funny. I was a child.
A little
John.
pun, sometimes they have these little bits of charm.
I knew no better.
They do.
But anyway, the taxis came, which was the main thing.
Oh.
Do you prank in your private life?
Well, I don't know. I lark around a bit. I probably do sometimes, sometimes when those sort of marketing calls that are coming in, and you get one of those and the line's a bit crackly, and they start to talk about PPI, this, that and the other. And that's when I usually pretend to be an answering machine. Thank you for calling. To speak to an operator, press 1. To remain on hold, press 2. To do the hoovering, press 3. up or all of them, and then they just disappear then, and
That
we've
is
had a bit
a
of
brilliant
a laugh.
idea, because I'm less polite. I just hang up. But if I fancy a bit of a joke, I
Yes,
can
exactly.
do that.
Just pretend to be an electronic answering device.
Or have you ever, if somebody said, so we'd like, we're calling from, unnamed charity, we'd like to discuss increasing your donation. Do you ever pretend to be, I don't know, the governor of the Bank of England or something?
Oh, I don't. Maybe
Canadian voice immediately.
Maybe
John,
Lord
please.
Sugar comes to mind and say, right, 100 million now.
Give us it, or there'll be trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Give us it, or there will be trouble.
Are you working on any new voices at the moment?
I think-
Are you always doing it?
I suppose you've always got to sort of keep, looking at who's coming over the horizon, thinking a few moves ahead. Nigel Farage is, great value at the moment. I think he sat in this chair when he got absolutely demolished on this station by James. And who else? I think, Ed Miliband has a sort of pleading sort of way around him. And when I go up and down the country, what people say to me when I talk to them on the doorstep, up and down the country, what they say is, who are you? What are you doing on my doorstep? Are you from the pizza shop?
I remember, I think it was Rory Bremner years ago said, he was in the studios I was working in, and he said that one of the things I think it was Rory Bremner, one of the things he kept in mind when he was impersonating Tony Blair was that he thought if you turn the sound down on anything he says, what he looks like he's saying is like a man appealing to a woman. Can't you see what I'm trying to tell you? Yes. I love you.
Yeah, that was Alistair McGowan.
Alistair
who did that
McGowan,
one.
sorry,
He said
my
that was
mistake.
as if he was going to, the speech could be whatever it might be when the time is right, when the conditions are right. But don't you see, I love you. Yeah. It was always the phrase that naturally followed on. That was one of Alistair's.
Though, isn't it? Do you ever do that? Do you ever watch people, even though, and I know you've done a lot on radio, but you've done TV as well. Do you ever watch the physicality of someone? Because it all feeds into how they communicate, doesn't it?
Usually it might be the physicality that you notice first. I think most of the time it probably is. That will give you some sort of rough
sense
hook
of the
to go
person,
into.
yeah.
Simon Cowell always has, the choppy hand gesture, that sort of thing, the smug nod. I think you're going to go a long way in this competition.
Weirdly, you actually morphed into him facially then.
I'm so sorry.
Shame I don't just morph into Fern or something. I just sit here. No,
I say that Boris, the head sinks lower into the shoulders, the arms go up, they flail around, sort of reflecting the inner confusion that's probably going on inside the mind.
Oh, there's a kind of spooky transfiguration going on in this room. Thank you, John, for coming and talking to us about this. Real pleasure to meet you.
And you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Jon Culshaw, impressionist and comedian. I want your stories now on hoaxing. But try not to hoax me. Don't go out of this room, Jon Culshaw, and hoax me. Pretend to be someone else.
I'll keep a listening. I'll monitor what's coming in, and I'll tell you what to look out for.
Thanks very much indeed.
So you know whether it's right or not. I've turned into Dominic Littlewood for no reason.
Do you do women? That's a strange question. Do you impersonate women?
Yes, I can do the agony aunt lady from this morning, Denise Robertson.
Yeah.
So write it down and you talk to her about it, pet, and I hope you work it out. I get a lot of letters about this.
Okay. We all want you to try Esther McVeigh.
Oh, right, yes, okay. Sort of like John Bishop crossed with a Dalek.
Sorry, Esther. Thank you, John.
I'm so sorry. She won't mind that.
She won't. I'm a Scouser and I don't mind it, so it's okay. Thanks very much, John. Jon Culshaw. Oh, knew that would be fun. Pleasure to meet you. Your thoughts now, not your questions, your stories of hoaxing. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. That was my Esther McVeigh impression. There you go.
That's great.
Thanks very much. 17 minutes past 3.
I'm Natalie Bailey in the LBC Travel Centre. On the M25 in Kent, the clockwise carriageway is blocked just before Junction 5 at Sevenoaks as a lorry is having its